Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Let's dive in. Putin's grip on Kaliningrad is slipping, and the Kremlin may be losing control. What could this mean for Russia's hold in Europe and its overall strategic posture? It's easy to assume that the Kremlin stands unshakable in Kaliningrad, a heavily militarized Russian enclave wedged between NATO members, but recent developments suggest that control is being tested in multiple dimensions: logistics, sovereignty, regional tension, and geopolitical isolation. Kaliningrad is unique. It's physically disconnected from mainland Russia, sandwiched between Poland and Lithuania, and depends heavily on transit agreements, maritime access, and resilience in a hostile strategic environment. After the full-scale invasion of Ukraine, sanctions, border restrictions, and pressure from the West started to erode that resilience. One of the pressure points is transit. Russian officials have accused the West of trying to isolate Kaliningrad by imposing restrictions on freight and passenger movement. Nikolai Patrushev, a senior Kremlin security advisor, claimed that about 80% of goods vital to Kaliningrad now cannot be transported by land, forcing Moscow to shift to sea and rail alternatives. Those alternate routes are slower, more expensive, and more vulnerable to disruption. But logistics is only one facade. There's also the political and administrative strain. The Kremlin's broader strategy has for years sought to centralize control over regional elites and integrate them more tightly with Moscow. But in peripheral, extraterritorial regions like Kaliningrad, that centralizing impulse is harder to sustain. The local authorities are pressured to toe the ideological and military line, manage supply bottlenecks, and maintain civilian morale under sanctions and border pressures. Media control, surveillance, and the suppression of dissent are standard in Russia's internal territories. But Putin's ability to enforce the same level of dominance in Kaliningrad is diminished by three structural realities. First, the dependence on external transit. Second, the security risk of being an isolated enclave. Third, the growing disconnect between what the Kremlin demands and what local capacity can deliver. Sanctions and logistical choke points amplify these tensions. Every time a rail link is delayed, a border checkpoint becomes rigid, or maritime routes face interference. The practicality of central control phrase. Putin's regime thrives on projecting invulnerability, but when a territory looks more like a pressure cooker, cracks become visible. Then there's the psychological dimension. If Kaliningrad residents begin to feel that Moscow is less able to protect their interests, or the enclave's status is becoming a liability, that shift can feed into local elites' calculations. Putin's system depends not only on coercion, but on elite compliance. In more remote or isolated regions, demands of survival sometimes outweigh loyalty. If we pull back and look at the broader pattern, Russia's challenges in Kaliningrad echo strains elsewhere. The Kremlin's centralizing efforts have provoked friction with regional elites, legal disputes over asset redistribution, and tension over performance metrics. Sanctioned elites or financially squeezed regions may push back subtly, seeking to renegotiate their terms rather than openly revolt. So what happens if Moscow's control slips further in Kaliningrad? First, the enclave's strategic value could weaken. It might become more of a burden than an asset, forcing Russia to rely on costly naval protection and supply corridors. Second, geopolitical adversaries may see openings to further isolate or pressure the region, instrumentalizing economic or diplomatic measures. Third, a symbolic loss, conceding that Kremlin dominion isn't as monolithic as it seems. That perception could ripple outward to other contested zones and embolden resistance. Still, slipping control doesn't equal immediate collapse. The Kremlin will likely escalate its pressure. Military deployments, heavier subsidies, ideological campaigns, even forced resettlement. The goal will be to reassert dominance before weaker zones unravel, but the margin of error is shrinking. In short, Putin's grip on Kaliningrad is being tested on multiple fronts: logistics, politics, local trust, and strategic sustainability. The Kremlin might not lose complete control anytime soon, but the balance in this enclave is tilting. That tilt could foreshadow cracks in Russia's broader posture. Thanks for watching.